fish out of water story is always a great premise. Think Crocodile Dundee, the outback croc hunter in New York, or Big, with a little kid magically transformed into the world of adults, or even Thor, the first Thor movie where the god of thunder has to fit into small-town America. But here's a real historical fish out of water story. 150 years ago, an Aboriginal cricket team went to England to play the English game. An Aboriginal 11, chosen mainly from the stockmen who played for their local cattle stations. Black Cockatoo is a play about that fateful season of sport. It's coming to the Theatre Royal in a few weeks on the 10th and 11th of March, and Wesley Enoch is the director of the play. Good morning, Wesley.
Good morning, Joel.
Now, this is such a great Australian story. Did you know the story before picking up the reins of this production?
Well, I didn't know all the detail. I'd had a kind of a memory of things people talking about, especially in 1988, because they did one of those reenactments of the tour as part of the bicentennial. And I kind of remembered it, but I didn't know all the detail. And this idea that, this great colonial game of cricket was taken on by an Indigenous team, and then was the first team to ever tour from Australia to England. But then I found out it was the first international touring team ever from anywhere to tour to England. So it was not just an Australian first, it was an international first. Extraordinary stuff.
Now, it's always a little fraught when you have a white writer telling black stories. So as an Aboriginal man yourself, how did you feel picking up that script for the first time?
Well, what was great, Jeffrey Atherton, people will know when he wrote Mother and Son, Grassroots, a whole range of things. He came to me with the story because he's trying to make a film of it. And he said, I want to focus on the white story. And he came to me, but I need to talk about what the black story is. And I said, why? Why is that something that you need to do? And I said straight away, I would cast it with an all-Indigenous cast straight away so that you actually get the irony and the kind of insight from a black perspective of what it means for this tour to go there. And he went, and we did a couple of workshops, and other people got involved. And then he created this whole other story about the present day and saying, well, what does this mean for us today to be remembering a group of Indigenous people going to England in 1868? And so, he's been so open and so generous, and we've been working together to make the script into what it is now. I mean, he's definitely the writer, but he's been workshopping and listening to a whole range of Indigenous influences to get there. I mean, I love having Indigenous writers write works that are important, and there are a whole range of Indigenous writers out there, especially in Tasmania. You have Nathan Maynard, who is an extraordinary local
isn't he just? Yeah, absolutely.
He's a character too. And I just think, you can't get him to write every story ever. So it's better to go, let him write his stories that he wants to do. And this is a story that Jeffrey Atherton can write and be part of.
What's he like to work with? Because we're all very well experienced with his sense of humour. Like he writes a squabble better than anyone, Jeffrey Atherton.
Well, and the play is full of that. These kind of, how would you say, interesting characters that are at odds with each other, and that there are trusts and mistrusts along the way. I mean, the central story is around Johnny Muller, who was, let's call him the lead cricket player out of these 13 Aboriginal men who go overseas. And there's a whole lot of stuff missing in the history because no one wrote down their story. It was all through the records of the newspapers and things. And so we say, okay, when Johnny Muller died, he had a number of objects that he still had. He had a pocket watch, a couple of pictures of English ladies, a cap, etc., etc. And we said, well, let's look at those things and let's create the story around that. And so these pictures of English ladies, which was, photographs of, the local lady of the house kind of thing. We said, I wonder if he fell in love with her. And so we've created this love story as well, out of just nothing really, but out of a kind of sense of saying, what would it have been like for a white woman to have built a relationship with a touring Aboriginal man? And that's part of it as well. And the kind of cultural differences that come out from all of that as well, from learning to read and write through to what does it mean to be talking about Darwinism and the Civil War in America. So there's a whole lot of conversations going on in this play, even though it is about cricket, it's actually about a whole lot of other stuff.
It must be a joy having a production with that solid Aboriginal cast to put together. What's the talent pool like for actors?
Well, can I say this was it was great that we could get this cast together. They're really quite top notch, but only 2 out of the original 6 actors are in this touring production because they've all gone on and got other jobs. Like it's post COVID. Let's touch wood, say we're post COVID. There's a sense of the touring networks opening up, and there's such an amazing pool of talent in Indigenous Australian actors in particular. When you see, um, you get Deborah Malman doing amazing things on television. You can get great film actors. You can get Rob Collins, and to see also in the theatre a great kind of intergenerational kind of pool too. I think we're coming up to a point where, for the first time in history, in terms of, let's say, acting, we're going to have people who are in their teens all the way up into their 80s who are acting and having an amazing career in the theatre and film. And I think that's something that we haven't seen before. And I'm really keen, as someone who's had a career now for 30-something years, to see how there's a full cohort, an amazing intergenerational thing. So in our production, we have people who have just graduated from NIDA, an Aboriginal actress who's just graduated from NIDA, through to a man in his early 50s who's been acting for decades. And you're seeing that exchange going on, not just in the characters, but behind the scenes, how they look after each other and care for each other. It's a beautiful experience.
Now, you've already mentioned Johnny Muller, who was kind of the front man for that team. Who are the other personalities from that cricket team that you think Australia should know, we should know and love and be proud of?
Well, there's Dick, and we've been working with his descendant, Uncle Richard Kennedy. And Dick was noted for, they used to be able to throw cricket balls at him, and he would use let's call it a shield, a long, thin shield, and knock them away like a bat would be. And he would do this. Oh, actually, big story. They would do the cricket games, and then on the day after, they would do what was called sports days, where Indigenous players would challenge the audience to run backwards as fast as you can, because apparently these Aboriginal cricketers, introduced the idea of running backwards to catch a ball because they could run so fast backwards. How's that? And this notion of the Dick being able to knock away balls along the way. Now, there is actually a sad story here too, that Bripaki, his name was, or King Cole, actually died of pneumonia whilst over there, and he's still buried in one of the parks in London. And we raised this as an issue too, going, what does it mean to die in another country, in a foreign land?
Yeah.
I did a play called Black Diggers, lots of black in here, but Black Diggers, and talking about Indigenous servicemen of World War I. And I had some insight into the kind of cultural thinking about that, saying, what does it mean for an Indigenous cricketer to have died of, pneumonia, but they said it could also have been tuberculosis, die over there and be buried over there and not to come home? And that's something that we talk about in the play as well. What was the cultural impact on the team of losing one of their own?
Wesley Enoch, the play is coming to Tasmania. Do you actually get to come with it?
I am coming with it. Exactly right. I love Tasmania. I was just there last weekend actually for Bangarra, that was performing at the Theatre Royal, and it's a beautiful city, Hobart, like beautifully located. And even though I'm a Queenslander, it's not too cold, so I can cope with that. But I am coming down, and I'll be around this is the beginning of a 3-month tour, and we're starting there in Tasmania at Hobart. And can I just give a bit of a shout out to the Theatre Royal? They're doing an amazing job. Simon Wellington, who's taken over there, is doing a really incredible job of connecting with the local community and making sure those stories are being told, like Cinsa Mansell and, as I said, Nathan Maynard. Like incredible local talents being nurtured, as well as bringing in Indigenous talents from the mainland.
Well, this has been one of the joys of the redevelopment of the Theatre Royal and the Hedberg building that's been built kind of around it, is there's a whole bunch of little theatres now as a part of that complex. So if you want to do something that's only going to have an audience of 100 people, you can, and still have the proper theatre experience going on around you. So it's been a lovely thing for the upcoming culture of Hobart. Wesley Enoch, really great to meet you. Have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Joel.